Magic the Gathering has just become a cityscape of references and nostalgia marketing. Mario Kart in the latest set, and everyone has a cowboy hat, and even our own version of Baby Yoda has entered the chat. Loot may not be in every single card art, but it does feel like everything's a reference and we've lost the originality of things. Most of the recent sets that have been released are in reference to something. Bloomo is a reference to anthropomorphic animals in series such as Redwall. Duskmourn is a horror fan's wet dream when it comes to references from movies all across the last 50 years. Yes, we've had Universes Beyond where we literally get to play with characters from Assassin's Creed and Final Fantasy upcoming, but the rage of sitting down in a Commander game and being able to play Optimus Prime, Gandalf, Black Panther, and Rick Grimes is well past the memes these days. It really is about recognizing that if we are gonna have Universes Beyond sets, we should have some in Magic sets, some original ideas. And no, we shouldn't be returning to Ravnica for the 50th time, but I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go over this topic in this video, look at where it started, and try and break down if we need all these references. Links to everything I'm going to discuss in the description down below, and if you want to see more breakdowns like this, then leave a like on the video and let me know what you want to see next. The topic for this video really started from this tweet. So in response to a recent splitter that we had on the 27th, who exactly is Magic the Gathering for at this point? What is the target audience for these jokes and references other than the designers? Can something just be itself and not something else anymore? Well, this really just becomes a really just in-depth problem. The idea of recognizability and marketing and grabbing people in has to have a subtle balance with original ideas as well, because it's hard to grab people with original ideas. We see this with the success of other TCGs out there. We have a League of Legends TCG coming out. Japanese TCGs have been doing this for years at this point, having Yu-Gi-Oh have an anime and Pokemon have an anime with the game series. On top of that, helping to grow the kind of Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon TCGs. We have the success of the One Piece TCG. We have the success likely of the Gundam TCG. And then we just have all of these things coming down the line, with Magic the Gathering being the spearhead of recognizability. The Fortnitification of the game has been a meme used for so long. And when it comes to references, we need to look at, firstly, what are the references being made? Because it may feel like it's just this set, but it really has just gone overdrive over the last year or so, and it's past Universes Beyond. So let's walk through that, then talk about some of the implications of this. So where are these references coming from? Firstly, we look at the one from the blue shell. So one of the most iconic parts about Mario Kart, if you played any racing game, you've probably seen some reference to this. The blue shell in more recent years has been one that you get usually more likely if you're in last place or one of the last places, and you get the ability to throw this. It's auto aim, and it immediately hits the player that, not immediately, but pretty much the person in first place, stops them in their tracks. They are able to kind of go afterward, but it just gives them that hard stop and gives people time to catch up. And so this spiny shell reference actually comes in Spike Shell Harrier, a blue card. When this enters, target creature or vehicle an opponent controls, return to your owner's hand. So it's kind of like that hard stop, so stopping them from going anywhere. But also, if an opponent's speed is greater than each other player's speed, so essentially in first place, reduce that opponent's speed by 1. This effect can't reduce it below 1. I kind of from a flavor perspective, you kind of lose that because I feel like it should just take it to 1, but it's kind of made up for the fact that you do get a bounce effect on it. So there's a lot of kind of references like that in this, and that's kind of the one that's sparking this idea of a reference, and how the Aether Drift set, even the checkered flag, just feels so out of place, feels non-fantastical. And so with this, we see references even with anthropomorphic animals in Redwall, a children's fantasy series very popularized by not only its books, by its show as well. We see artists, one of the primary artists, not of Redwall, but also of Mouseguard, which a lot of people can see as analogous, also making his way into the art for Bloomo. So a lot of Redwall references in the Bloomo set, but we see literally the designer and artist for that, David Peterson, coming in, providing special artwork for some of the legendaries that exist in this set. So that was actually a really cool part of it. I think honestly this is a bonus, especially because it's a special art for it. It may not even, it's not even the primary art. I just thought it was really cool when it comes to stuff like this with David. So that's a really cool kind of not only reference, but a use of one of the primary artists for it. I guess you can consider it a reference in that case. Now, when it comes to something like Ghost Vacuum, this is a more direct one out of Duskmourn, and there's so many references in Duskmourn for tropes and direct movie callouts, but Ghost Vacuum very clearly is a Ghostbusters weapons reference. So again, another idea of a card that isn't anything, like it just can't be itself. This could have been like a crypt weapon or seal of the crypt or something, and it sucks people in and like whatever, right? Like it's a graveyard hate piece. It saw play in and out. It still sees some play in and out in the Urza Saga packages of Legacy and everything, the rare case in Modern, but is a popularized card with a reference on it. So this is one that I find that people are referencing most often when it comes to references. And I'll kind of link this article down below from Star City Games, but like also providing other references from Come Back Wrong and Evil Dead, and a little bit of Pet Cemetery, Curse Recording, referring to like The Ring, and Doomsday Executioner literally referring this art from They Live. Like it's really cool, right? So there's a lot of fun little references that exist in Magic, and that's what I'm going to call them. They are fun references. For the initial view of it, it is really cool to have something recognizable to draw you in, to get excited for a set. And you see that with many creators and people out there. For a lot of casual players, and you're going to see this as a common thread, the Commander players that play this game to build themes and have that fun and promote the gathering are there to enjoy these type of call-ins. The problem is you get this lost in translation for a lot of constructed players, and I think it just might be like, at the end of the day, there is a big disconnect for a lot of these people, but a lot of them might just be taking it a little too literally. I think they're entering this game as something they want to be separated in high fantasy. It wouldn't be fun if Lord of the Rings books were like remade, or the movies were remade and they made like Harry Potter references. That would be very awkward in and of itself. So there's a lot of IPs that are like very well protected, but even Lord of the Rings entering Magic the Gathering can be seen as like a break, albeit not that much, but the fact that, you know, the One Ring took over the game, that's a whole marketing aspect. But Lord of the Rings is like cemented in people's minds. If you're a constructed player, Orcish Bowmaster's goddamn everywhere in every format it's legal in. So when it comes to the effect of these formats, not only do they have to sell them through nostalgia marketing and a draw of some of the more powerful characters in there, but you also get that effect of powerful cards being introduced in them. Some of these references might be put onto the more powerful cards that they believe will see the most constructed play, and so we'll have that selling. It's that kind of give and take marketing. So, you know, we will have these references in here and maybe give a little bit back. Obviously, Duskmourn isn't a direct Universes Beyond reference set. They don't have that direct nostalgia marketing, and as reference, this is more so for the designers of the cards that have fun with stuff like this. Who is this for? It is for the people that like horror sets. It is for the people that like the Redwall sets. It's for the people that maybe might recognize themselves with the Forza games or the Mario Kart games, like some type of racing analog that they have fun with. Those are the people that's meant to draw. And so when it comes to the schedule of last year, if we look at the amount of sets that they're in, Ravnica remastered set, Mysteries of Karlov Manor was a Clue set. They literally released a package that was Clue themed, a box that was Clue themed, Clue cards. Fallout is a Universes Beyond set. Outlaws of Thunder Junction could be seen as a reference set as well, because it was literally a Wild West reference, referral, like referring to those tropes of cowboys and hats and Wild West adventures. Modern Horizons 3 is... I don't even need to go into that one. Forget that. That's the only unique set that you get out of last year. And it's actually just like almost feels like a remastered set, because it's just Ravnica remasters literally cards that we've seen before, but Modern Horizons is like cards that we've seen before, but also power crept versions or powered down versions of cards that we've seen before as well. Like it's almost hard to like find net new cards in there as well, because a lot of them are just callbacks and references to cards that we've seen before. Look at the Astral Slide decks and everything. Assassin's Creed is a reference in a Universes Beyond set. Bloomo reference set. Duskmourn reference set. We have actually had what you would believe is actually like no net new sets that don't reference anything. We have had net new sets though, net new planes. Duskmourn was a really cool reference to a plane that was a complete horror house. That's a really cool like idea for a plane. Bloomo was a really cool idea for a plane as well, getting those people to come in as anthropomorphic animals, getting them cute, getting people into it from the animal perspective. That's cool too, actually. It's all references. So what do we get from those references? Do they actually detract from some of your enjoyability of other things? Is it just the fact that some of the references are taking too far? Are you okay with like the Redwall references, but you're not okay with like Luigi's Mansion entering like Duskmourn or something like that? Because there are soft references to that as well. When it comes to 2025 and its release schedule, we look at, Aether Drift already right here as a racing set. Tarkir Dragonstorm is technically, that's going to be the first likely in-universe set that we are returning to. So it's going to be a reference to something else. Like, I just hope y'all understand something. Like, there's a theme here of like, we are either returning to sets that people have good feelings for. Return to Ravnica, return to Innistrad, return to Tarkir. People always talk about the feeling that original Tarkir standard had for them. You understand that this is all nostalgia marketing, right? Magic the Gathering is all nostalgia marketing. It is calling back to cards of old, sets of old. Aether Drift actually technically introduced a net new plane, the third plane that they go into with all the oozes and like where like mimeoplasm comes from is technically a net new set that they like soft launched into like Aether Drift. So we might go into there in the future, but a lot of these sets are returned because they realize they can't sell some of these sets because some of them didn't do so well. Like when we originally visited Amonkhet, to be fair, that was a time where they released like one of the most peak Magic trailers of all time. So they could go back to marketing of that. But even that is a recognizable trope of like the Egyptians and movies of haunted crypts and zombies and like wolf-like creatures to symbolize Anubis and all that stuff. Everything is about recognizability. You can't just make things up. That doesn't relate to players out there. Everything is a reference to something. You grew up with these tropes in net new media, and as you grow up, you just go back to what you recognize. You go back to the fact that you watched TMNT growing up, so you like a little bit of high slinging action with some anthropomorphic animals. You like some high strung fun with some turtles beating people up. You might even like the people that actually unironically watch the Sonic movies. Blows my mind. I didn't grow up with Sonic. I think those movies are dumb, but people like them. They actually like them for so many reasons, and there probably are good reasons to like them. I'm not a big fan of them, but someone is, and that's the key. When it comes to the Final Fantasy set, Universes Beyond, this set will sell the hell up. You know how many weebs are gonna love this set? As an anime fan myself, as a manga fan myself, someone in that side of the world, Final Fantasy is not anime manga, but it is analogous. It is what a lot of people that are not in that scene will believe Final Fantasy to be because of like weeb quote unquote culture. It'll be analogous to that, and I'm like adjacent to it. I never played the Final Fantasy games. I don't have hate for them. It wasn't my genre at the time. And so now I could play them and get an appreciation for them. I understand the main characters. I understand a lot of the plots because I'm an avid video gamer. And so I understand some of this and see the characters and understand the references. But I know friends that were like, they're like, yo, I'm getting into Magic right now. I legitimately know two people that are like, yo, I want to get into Magic the Gathering with the Final Fantasy set. I have people that want to collect Magic the Gathering because Marvel is coming down the line. These are ultimately bringing people in, and the sets that you have that you enjoy have kept you in there because they are recognizable to things you've seen in the past. Khans of Tarkir, people are excited for because it is Tarkir, a set that a lot of people are recognizability with. How many times have we returned to Ravnica and people have honestly not even batted an eye because they're like, yo, this is a net positive because we're probably getting reprints of the Shocklands. We're going back to Tarkir, we're getting reprints of the fetch lands probably, or a new land cycle. We're getting landfall back. Like, we get these mechanics that people have enjoyed, a return of things that you are familiar with and you have liked at a yesteryear, but now you are jaded by nostalgia marketing that isn't for you, even though you've been going through that all this time. Edge of Eternities is going to be a goddamn like space opera set. This is going to be Star Wars. Universes Beyond for the last one for the year. Who knows when that's actually going to come out, if that's going to come out. We have to shift back. I believe Return to Lorwyn, was it? In 2026, just for that Universes slot to be in there. And that's a Return to Lorwyn. Y'all wanted to go back to Lorwyn. Y'all are so excited for Lorwyn. Yes, we can return to it. But when it comes to the third time that we return to Lorwyn, can we just all admit, can we be honest with ourselves that that is just nostalgia marketing? We can return to a set once, but once you start doing it actively, the return to Lorwyn, can we all just admit that it's the exact same marketing idea and principle that all these other sets have had? And what happens is we work with our wallets. We want less sets, less product. We want a longer time to enjoy these products, but every single Magic player enjoys Magic at a different pace. They want new cards. They play more actively. Like, you playing a modern league once a week is probably actually not enough Magic as someone who is playing multiple games of Commander that end up being like an hour long. If you play a league of Magic chances are it's somewhere in between 1 to 2 hours. That 1 to 2 hours is easily eclipsed. Those 5 games are easily eclipsed by multiple Commander games a week. Those people are playing so much Magic that the casual audience, on average these days, it feels like the casual audience is playing more Magic than the actual constructed player. Yes, the grinders are out there. The vocal minority of the internet is not the statistics you're looking at. The casual player that they're selling to en masses. Look at the average length of a Commander game. Look at the average amount of Commander games that you play per night. Those casual players are probably playing more Magic than you on average. They like more diversity in their games. They like their themes. They like their callouts. Those are what this marketing is for. That is why the constructed players are being left behind. They're just not in an avenue where they play more games of Magic. They don't spend most time playing Magic. They spend the most time buying sideboard guides and looking up min-maxing what their 59th, 60th card is in their main deck. Commander players are just doing this on a whim. They're replacing anything and everything because it's got a goddamn Ghostbusters reference. So in the 2024 State of a Design article, we had this little bit here where they had lessons. They're too on the nose with tropes. So the big thing you have to remember is there is a lot of feedback right now as well with this video that there are too many tropes. There are too many references. There are too many callbacks to media and previous sets that we've had, that we've seen. Instead, there are too many on the nose tropes. Resonance is good, but there's such a thing as too much of it. I feel this year we leaned a bit too far in that direction with numerous sets. The volume of cards on a certain topic was simply too high, and our overtone was at times too meta in its creation. We don't want to continue to make cards about topics that excite people, so we do, but we need to look at our execution. And so you have to understand the development cycle of Magic the Gathering. It's very important that you provide your feedback. It is very important that if you aren't a fan of what's going on, to voice that opinion, because that's very fair. You are a consumer. You are allowed to have your opinion on that. And it's going to take some time to implement because their design cycle is approximately 2 to 3 years. So if this is the type of thing that they're saying at the end of 2024, they're probably taking this in mind, the cards that they're going to design to release likely mid to late 2026. That's just the inevitability of it. We're going to have to deal with this for the next year and a little bit of the year after. And then hopefully in the State of Design, getting those sets out for the year after, we are going to see maybe a shift in the maybe net new sets, maybe a little bit less in terms of references, make them a little bit more vague. But that's kind of the timeline of what we're looking at for kind of reference sets like that. Heck, even this recent Blogatalk from Magic Data Science just kind of posting this. This was January 28, 2025. Burning Wish asked, "Hi Mark, thanks for being as open to conversation on people's UB opinions as you are. I wonder if part of the issue people have, although of course a minority of people, is that recent run of in-universe sets are themselves pushing the boundaries of acceptable magic worlds. Do you think UB, maybe calling each of the individuals sets that people are calling too tropey, would have been better received by this crowd with closer to typical Magic worlds spacing out from one another more?" And now, it's pushing the boundaries of what's an acceptable quote unquote Magic world. And, a Wild West plane and a whole set taking specifically in like Karlov manner. Like, it's kind of nice to see some of these ideas explored, but what it means to be a high fantasy Magic set, it's hard to push that because again, you have to understand how marketing works. Ultimately, all of these sets that have come out, all of them have had a purpose to it. Even Lorwyn was like a certain type of high fantasy. You have Mirrodin, which was a certain type of high fantasy. Do you want like Mirrodin, but with like enchantments? Like, is that what you want? Like an oil slake artifact theme machine, Terminator-esque, like hive mind overlord type of set? Like that in and of itself is a trope as well. Right, we have the Ravnica guilds that work towards their own themes and their own goals. They have their own personalities. Like that in and of itself is a high fantasy trope. The idea of the inquisitive group, the low secrecy Dimir, the wild rambunctious and kind of gruel, the like all the cops that are the Azorius, right? Like, you have all these tropes that exist in other media as well. The idea of guilds and their personalities and their guild masters and getting into a guild. Like if you played a fantasy game, the quests that you have to do to join a guild and be a part of their doctrine and the spells you might get access to in the game once you join the guild. Like these are all things that made its way into Ravnica. Everything in and of itself is a trope and a reference to something that you already recognize. The problem is you are more accepting of the references that are high fantasy. The problem is these high fantasy tropes were all made by a group of authors in between the 50s and the 80s. High fantasy, high like science fiction, all this stuff is in reference in some way to some type of Isaac Asimov or some type of George Lucas. It's all in reference to what was before, and then it builds on each other until the point where it becomes unrecognizable. A new generation, you know, grows up without Star Wars, without all those old fantasy novels. And then you get some quote unquote net new ideas that still ultimately reference those IPs, right? Like 2001 A Space Odyssey. I'd be very surprised if those weren't referenced in Edge of Eternities. Everything is going to be a reference somewhere. You're saying going out into spaces and fantasy, when people talk about the idea of aliens and life on Mars, like that is some type of fantasy. It just doesn't have elf ears and fairy wings. It is another type of thinking beyond the human norm. Everything is a reference to something. Net new ideas almost don't exist anymore. My favorite saying is, if you've thought of it, someone else has thought of it as well. It's very hard to come up with net new ideas in something like the real world. People have had these thoughts, they just may not implement it. Yes, your great grandfather probably came up with Uber. Did he implement it? No. Of course he didn't, right? No one came up with that. Right? No one came up with that in a way that was implementable or was there at the right time at the right place. But these sets are here at the quote unquote time and place that they want it to be. And that is where these references come from. And ultimately, he responds and says, the biggest issue is we work with the long lead time. We are listening to what players are saying, but our reaction will be slow as the lead time. Yes, 2020 hindsight, we could have done things differently. And so that's kind of where, you know, Saffron Olive even references this, you know, kind of the idea of tropes here. And so Jake Brown says down here, right, but wouldn't that long lead time make it more responsible to not go so hard in the ideas on rapid succession? Test the waters, get feedback, proceed from there. Babe, we've never really eaten bison before, but I bought a full, you know, freezer pull. So this is like a bit of a disingenuous like example, because you have to like, I think like, yo, these are people that like, I think I've seen tweets from Jake before. It looks like they've had like a general idea of how business and marketing works. You just have to go all in on an idea. You pitch it in a meeting. You kind of make it to the fact where, yes, this follows nostalgia marketing. Look at how Andor season 2 is selling and all that bullcrap. And you add it together into a list of ideas, you implement those ideas, and you just see if it works or fails, because you don't want to create a bunch of things that are individually just opposite to each other. It doesn't feel like a concerted story. It feels like everything matches if people expect references. People are going to look at they looked at Bloomo and they're like, oh, this is like, look at that mouse warrior, that looks like Redwall. People looked at Dustmore and they're like, oh, look at this cheerleader hopping over these ghosts, and like that's a cool reference to the dead cheerleader, the one who dies first or whatever, right? Like, these are the things that people get excited for. These are the people that people think of, and they expect these type of references. So when you have a group of them, people are going to look out for them. They're not going to stop troping. They're not going to stop referencing. I hope you understand that. They're going to keep doing so. They're just going to do so more carefully and more tastefully, which might be the acceptable level for all of us, for a lot of you. And that's okay. They're just not going to stop, because nothing else stops. As I've said multiple times in this video, everything is reference. Don't act like the things that you're consuming today, the books you're reading, the movies you're watching, they're all net new ideas. It's very hard to have net new ideas. Some of them are beautiful. Some of them are net new ideas. They are obviously like a sci-fi fantasy, but their execution is different. The story that they're telling, the end message, that's fair. That's a net new idea. But they all reference something in some way, shape, or form. Glad they're acknowledging this, but really hope that there are cards that are meme or tropey, like holy cow and stuff. But the entire set that is a meme or a trope just isn't it. And I mean, that's fair too. Some meme cards, and that's where that post came from. Even some down here, like Aetherdrift could have been even more a meme. There's no Fast and Furious family meme cards, and so that's completely fair. You know, people were making the Fast and Furious Vin Diesel family memes. But when it comes to execution, I think there is a fine line. And where that fine line comes in is understanding this response statement here. So, you know, Wizard NX said down below, yes, Magic has always had references and jokes, but why does it have to be a playable advertisement for other properties? Is there any other game besides Fortnite that integrates as much of other franchises as Magic does? Why does this game feel like increasingly out of touch? I mean, look at literally Union Arena. Union Arena is a amalgamation set of different animes. The whole Japanese TCG market, by the way, is all references. The net new ideas were Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic the Gathering was a net new idea. All these net new ideas are top 3. But then everything else is nostalgia marketing. Disney's Lorcana, the League of Legends TCG, as I mentioned, again, the whole Japanese TCG market, it's all references. You're not making a net new idea. How do people relate to that? With all these other busy games, with all this history, how do you insert yourself? You do it with recognizability. Okay, you do it with the only and people are going to keep quoting Flesh and Blood in the comments. I hate these people. Oh my God, I get it. Flesh and Blood is a good game. The only reason Flesh and Blood worked, let me get this clear to everybody right now. The only reason Flesh and Blood worked, which is fine, this is the market that they took, is that competitive Magic fell apart, still has fallen apart. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It kind of does because we've gotten used to it at this point. And they took all those competitive Magic players and brought them in, and those people began to advertise to their friends and take it off from there. That is it. There's no Commander variant. There's no mass market appeal. People are playing Flesh and Blood. People are doing so competitively. It is a growing game, but it will never be top 3. With their current marketing and design strategy, Flesh and Blood will never beat Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Pokemon. It will never do it. Do not lie to yourself if you think so. You will never come up with a legitimate argument. Try it in the comment section down below. Flesh and Blood is a successful TCG, but it will never be better than Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, or Yu-Gi-Oh. All three of which are net new ideas that have had to kind of adapt in their marketing strategy. Flesh and Blood is a net new idea that capitalized on a gap in the market, which is fair. That's good business practice. But they will not be able to grow from there. The market is very casual right now. The market wants these new ideas. They want references. They want recognizability. There's a lot. The plate is full. The offerings on the table are big. People want a little bit of everything. They're not going to stop and fill up their plate with that one giant turkey roast that you got. They want some veggies. They want some potatoes. They want a little bit of them sausages over there. They want a little bit of everything. They want to make a plate. They want to have their cake too. They want it all. That's what consumerism is right now. It's about having everything at your fingertips. This is why we have so many sets out right now. This is why we have so many products, like how Amazon it gets us to like melts our brains in terms of product availability. Prime shipping and just having everything at our fingertips. This is why we have all of this. We are only integrating because everything else is a reference. Yu-Gi-Oh references itself, Pokemon references itself. Heck, we even have Alestrals, like the Creator A Drive Alestrals is literally like a Pokemon analog set, and inevitably they're not going to escape it. They clearly designed it. There was a marketing idea behind it. They designed Alestrals to be a kind of Pokemon-esque looking set for recognizability. It's a smart idea. The card game plays out very differently, and it's a really cool one. I recommend you check it out. Not an ad, but you know, recognize your options out there as a TCG player. And then ultimately, and yes, there is a huge difference between subtle, oh, that's pretty clever, to references and a Redditor. Do you recognize this because the set is about blank? Do you get it? Remember this from your childhood like a meme? Member? That's a Memberberry reference for all my South Park fans out there. But ultimately, we can look at implementation. So I always like to use Star Wars for this because it's like the one with like the loudest fandom. And probably one of the original places where the whole like garbage trash word of like woke and the abuse of like EDI has come from, where like loser Republican right-wing people will just like use it as like a call sign. Like every time they call Star Wars too woke or something, it's not about woke EDI. Okay, black people, brown people, people of color, and gays and trans have all existed for time. We didn't call it anything, right? People with mental health issues, you know, they all existed. Autism existed. Your uncle who liked trains back in the 50s was probably on the spectrum somewhere. They just didn't call it anything. They just called it your weird uncle. And so nowadays, when it's front facing, all these white people got a problem for some reason. So Star Wars is a good example of this. A diversity of characters, implementation of a good story, and or can stand by itself as a Star Wars IP that tells a story about stakes. And I think ultimately that is the problem with where Star Wars and the implementations of its story goes. It tries to introduce too much of a nostalgia marketing in the sense of too many of the main characters have like grip on the story. You can't kill off too many of them, but you also don't develop too many other stories for people to care about, have them live and have them die. And or did that differently. There were higher stakes at this smaller level. You didn't have necessarily, obviously you have a bunch of characters in this poster that you recognize as Star Wars fans that have high stakes in the rest of the series. They may not die, but you have a lot of characters as well that don't have high stakes that you believe in, you follow, you like because of their motivations. And so with stakes of death and with stakes of pain and suffering, and with ultimate stakes as to how a small scale story like this can affect a larger arc that is Star Wars, Andor was really successfully implemented in terms of its storytelling because of its stakes. I talk about this with so many other pieces of anime. Naruto Shippuden has to be one of the, like, I talk about how crap that anime is. And the only reason people keep pointing at the Fourth Great Ninja War and the Pain arc is because those arcs had stakes. People died, people got defeated. The Pain arc only works because Jiraiya died. And if you think that's a spoiler, screw off. You had so many years to watch that. Jiraiya died, which is why the Pain arc works. Really think about the Naruto arcs out there, the anime arcs that you love, the ones that you really like. There were stakes to them. There was a reason to like them. And this is where Magic's story falls apart. This is why you can't recognize yourself with the sets now. The story makes no sense because you see the same characters over and over and over again. They freaking brought back Elspeth. They brought back Elspeth. They refused to kill Jace. This is the problem with Magic story. It's not nostalgia marketing. It's not references. You cannot connect with the story because there are no stakes in its implementation. There's no issues. We went to Phyrexia, took over, got defeated, and everything went back. Everyone lost their spark, but everyone can travel back in terms of a plane, all in one set. One set did that. 10 cards wrapped up together told that story. Does that feel like a good story to you? If you brought it out over a little while, yeah, it could be. And then they kind of built up to it. The return of the Eldrazi, it was cool. But then the end of the Eldrazi was brought about in one set. Like Magic the Gathering is a failure of storytelling. It's not a failure of design. It's not a failure of artwork. It's not a failure of woke design or whatever the hell, again, some Republican grifting is going to do. Some right-wing grifting. I got to stop using Republican. It's just right-wing grifting. It's just terrible people grifting. That doesn't mean anything. It's bad storytelling. No one has any consequences. Nothing is happening in the Magic story. I can't tell you what's happening because there's no reason for me to care. They brought back Baby Yoda, and the card now has Dark Ritual, Ancestral Recall, and freaking whatever lightning bolt on it. That's a reference too. That's a reference too. They be putting this stuff. They just printed a new Lotus. How many versions of Black Lotus are y'all gonna print? That in itself is a marketing tactic. Putting Lotus on a card is a marketing reference. You have to then design the card around Lotus. It is all marketing, callbacks, nostalgia. The implementation of it is what is important. The consequences, the story attached to it is all what's important. People really enjoy old Magic because they were tied in with stories. You had characters that you really cared about. Why do you think people really care about Urza and Mishra and Teferi? It's not because Teferi's black. It's not because Urza's this, Urza's that. Yes, there is recognizability because these can be people of color, people with certain backgrounds, certain tropes, but it's ultimately because these characters have a history. These characters have consequences to their story, sadness and great tumultuous, like terrible decisions that they've had to make. It's all because we care because they're real characters. Magic the Gathering is suffering from a story implementation problem. It is not nostalgia marketing. It is not callbacks. It's only that because that's all you have to care about. The fact that you're caring about the blue shell thing means you're yelling at the wrong thing. You're yelling at the sky when the problem is right in front of you. I mean, take a look at The Acolyte. The Acolyte was a really cool story implemented terribly. What the hell are these space witches rewriting the midichlorians? I mean, they had Darth Plagueis in there. It could have been really cool. It could have been really cool. It's not about, oh, the main character's a female, black. Like, what? Stop saying woke in the comments. Go unsubscribe if you think that. Get the hell out of here. Y'all are losers if you're shouting at Star Wars for being too woke. It's bad storytelling. It's poor implementation. It's bad writing. That's what it is. It's not the characters. It's not the design. The implementation of these stories and the lack of consequences and how they fit into the larger scale of these stories are why these shows fail. why media fails now, because everything is a sequel to callback but is poorly implemented and written. We are filling niches with the 7th Shrek movie of a story that doesn't need to be told. Ultimately, Shrek 2 will always be the best Shrek movie out there. It is not Shrek 1. Stop listening. Like, if you want to go off pure soundtrack, Shrek 2 is by far, I will not be hearing any argument. Shrek 2 is the best Shrek movie out there. Soundtrack, story, everything. That is actually a sequel that did well. It filled a niche, it told a story, it told its jokes, had all around great implementation. Once you started getting to 3, 4, 5, you started telling some garbage. One of them was like not even a story. You went back in time with Rumpelstiltskin and then you fixed it and came back. It didn't even happen if you really think about it. It didn't even really happen. So again, all this to highlight with Shrek, with anime, with Star Wars. The shows can be good. The premises can be good. The stories are all there. The basis is there. The implementation, lack of consequences and reason to care is why you care about nonsense right now. It's not about nostalgia marketing. It's not about callbacks. It's not about that. It's about the implementation of the story. And that's where I'm ultimately going to land off with my rant in this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you believe that I don't know, do you believe in any of the rant that I just talked about? Do you believe that it's time that we go back and fix Magic Story? Can Magic Story even be fixed? I don't know. I feel like if I keep going any farther, I'm going to keep yapping again. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Just something needs to change with Magic. I mean, look, overall, if you watch this far in the video, I really do love Magic. I'm in a great place with Magic. I've done a lot of positive content recently just to show y'all, because y'all have been saying I've been hating. I really do like where Magic is right now. I'm at a good place with it, even as a content creator that absorbs so much. A lot of people aren't, and we can still have everyone happy if we were to just implement things properly.